Hello, welcome to the Culture Quarter. I'm Siobhan Heanue. Coming up on this episode, we explore the magical myths of life and death in Southeast Asian art, plus the gigantic new art installation that celebrates the sky. But first up, in an age of point-and-shoot photography, it seems that everyone's an artist. But it's professional photographers that are feeling the pinch. They're fed up with rules that restrict commercial photography in public places, even at icons like the Opera House and Uluru. Hundreds of snappers took to the streets of Sydney to vent their frustrations. David Lewis was there.
Message is this: we want our basic civil liberties, the right to take photographs. And bring back the love in photography.
Tourists can take pictures of the Sydney Harbour Bridge free of charge, but professional photographers say they're being denied the same right.
Well, all over Australia it's just getting worse. Bureaucrats are out of control, like at a federal level, at a state level, at a local level.
Many councils, state government bodies and trusts require photographers to have a permit or pay a fee before taking pictures in public places. Whether it's the Opera House or Kakadu National Park, photographers say they're constantly being treated with suspicion.
Once up in Cairns, I was doing a morning shoot there of a pool in a public area. And then along comes the guard and says, "You can't take photos here." And I'm saying, "Why? There's no one here." He said, "You might be a pedophile."
Tired of feeling like criminals, hundreds of photographers staged a protest in Sydney, taking unauthorised photos of the city in defiance of current rules and regulations. A permit to take photographs here at Bondi Beach costs $150 plus an additional $75 each hour, but many councils argue that the fees are necessary in order to manage the large number of people who want to make use of popular tourist sites. The Mayor of Waverly Council in Sydney's East, Sally Betts, supports the permit system.
There's not one photographer. If it was one photographer, there wouldn't be a problem. We have at least 1,000 applications a year.
Applications that can cost hundreds of dollars and take weeks to be approved. Photographers say the process is restricting their freedom of expression.
We need to be that friendly nation again, like that's who we are. Australians are, "G'day mate, how you going?" Not, "What are you doing with your camera? Are you a commercial photographer?"
Worried about the next generation of photographers?
They need the same freedom I had to go and tell their story.
Ken Duncan is calling for a nationally consistent set of rules which allow their stories to be told.
Nowhere is the power of art more potent than in the ancestral art of Southeast Asia. The National Gallery has collected together more than 200 pieces spanning 2,000 years of reverence and ritual in a show called Life, Death and Magic. The National Gallery's latest exhibition comes with a warning.
It's a little bit creepy.
Featuring Southeast Asian art from the past 2,000 years, Life, Death and Magic is breathtaking in its breadth.
It's about the art that venerates the ancestral beliefs in all of Southeast Asia. It's an art which is older than Buddhism or Hindu in our region and underpins those religions.
From gallery favourites to new acquisitions, from tiny, overtly precious objects to this 3-metre-long wooden celestial horse from Flores, and the world's biggest collection of textiles from the region, one of the gallery's great jewels.
You'll never see textiles as rich and as fabulous and as original as these.
It's the first ever exhibition of Southeast Asian ancestral art ever staged in Australia.
It's been a very challenging exhibition to put up, but I think it'll really show ancestral art to its very best advantage.
These pieces come from some of our nearest neighbours, yet this art is still unfamiliar to most Australians.
I think it's very important to bring the art of our region to the attention of Australian audience. I think that's a very prime reason. I defy anyone to know this material.
While it's now too late for the NGA to build a world-class collection of old masters or impressionists, Robyn Maxwell believes the gallery's growing collection of ancestral art from Southeast Asia will one day be regarded as among the world's best.
And we hope that we've done our buying by that stage and we can actually sit back and look at our collection and still maintain an important world-first collection.
Life, Death and Magic runs until the end of October.
Still at the National Gallery, and from the ancient to the ultra-modern, a monumental new artwork has been unveiled called Sky Space. It's now the biggest work in the whole collection, and while it's made by an American artist, it has a distinctly Australian feel. Under the Earth, an out-of-this-world experience. Made of marble, steel, rock and water, the structure uses light and space to affect perception of the sky.
It's really about, in a sense, sky worship.
American artist James Turrell hails from one of the world's wildest places, and he's fascinated by the different quality of light around the planet. A man with an eye for the sky and a background in aeronautical cartography, Australia's crystal clear stratosphere beckoned.
The Arizona high desert sky at 35 degrees north is very close to the 35 degrees south that we are here. So it's a sky I'm somewhat familiar with, but it has its own beauty.
His latest sky space is one of several around the world.
It's his largest work that he's constructed so far, and of course it's the only one in the southern hemisphere.
Viewers go below to gaze above. Inside a domed chamber with heated benches, the observer is cocooned in light and sound, and perhaps in thought too.
Generally, we think of light as something that we illuminate other things with, but I'm interested in the thingness of light itself.
With the gallery set to unveil a brand new multi-million-dollar wing, they're hoping this work will light the way.
It signifies a new beginning for us.
Eventually, there'll be dawn and dusk sessions, the most dramatic time to see the structure work its magic.
What you get out of art is what you bring to it, and this is an important thing.
Space to ponder the wide blue yonder. He told some of the most incredible adventure stories of the 20th century. Frank Hurley was an explorer extraordinaire. His diaries and photographs are held by the National Library, and they show that he was also a masterful storyteller.
Years ago, very few people had been to Antarctica, but they were hugely curious. And it's Frank Hurley's photographs and films that made Antarctica come to life for a mass public.
An irreverent and at times controversial figure, Frank Hurley is a favourite of photographic historians like Helen Ennis.
Hurley as a photographer, he was incredibly inventive. He would have loved Photoshop because he was someone who never felt wholly bound by what he saw out there. He would often combine a whole lot of negatives because he would be wanting to give you a feeling of the heightened reality.
Hurley explains those unique processes in a series of detailed diaries. The writings add some personal context to what are famous images.
Every foot had to be won against a relentless and cruel wind with bowed backs and straining muscles.
Here we have just a few of the 28 diaries by Frank Hurley in the library's collection. They date between 1912 and 1961, so from when he was quite a young man to just before his death.
Now, if you think of Facebook and the kinds of things we do online, the precedents for that, of course, are diaries, and travel writing has a really long and good history.
So he was the first Antarctic blogger.
Yeah, you know, not only would he have loved Photoshop, he would have loved blogging.
The ocean, a blue, mirrory expanse, rippleless, Above, a canopy of the most wonderful blue nimbus clouds I've ever looked on.
Helen Ennis has focused her work on two of Hurley's Antarctic adventures, the 1911 expedition with Douglas Mawson and Ernest Shackleton's 1914 Trans-Antarctic expedition.
The Mawson expedition was filled with tragedy, which Hurley was greatly affected by. 2 men died, and Mawson himself was very lucky to make it back to base. When he had failed to return on time, Hurley was one of the men sent out to look for him.
What characters we looked. Faces nearly black with sunburn and seared with frostbite, begoggled and whiskered.
Now, what Ernest Shackleton, who was an English explorer, hoped to do was cross the Antarctic continent. So it was hugely ambitious. It was in all the English newspapers. Everyone was incredibly excited about it because it was going to be a Herculean struggle to get from one side to the other.
The ship's stem broke off part of the floe on which it was standing. Fortunately, it went up instead of down.
The Shackleton expedition is a famous failure, documented by Hurley's films and images.
Then the mainmast fell, snapping off about 10 feet above the main deck.
This is our good ship Endurance, taken at midwinter. She's rimed up from top to bottom with crystals of ice. This is the poor old ship after the disaster after she was crushed in the ice floes, the wreck. And here Shackleton is setting out for relief, 800-mile voyage to South Georgia, one of the great boat voyages.
And I think some of these photographs that he took are the most important photographs, not just that have come out of Antarctica.